guys, welcome to the Adventure Athletes podcast. We've got another guest on this week, Deon from True North Project. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, guys.
No
Good
worries.
setup. I like it.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a mission getting you on. Just timings and a few mix-ups. But we got there. So, yeah. So Deon's he's Beyond 6, and he's...
Formally. Yeah.
Formally?
Yeah, formally.
Okay. And he also runs the True North Project. Ex-military.
Yeah.
He was serving for 8 years, was it?
8 years.
8 years serving in the military. And that's a recent thing that you stopped doing, isn't it?
It is. I think due to a lot of things, starting a family, just getting a property, getting on the ladder, and this project and the fuel it needed to fuel the flame kind of thing. It took a lot of me to kind of conjure up the idea of leaving the military, because it was that safety net, I think, especially during COVID times. It was probably the most sustainable job at the time, really.
Yeah.
You knew you was having an income, you knew you wasn't going to get sacked anytime soon. So for me, I saw a lot of blessings within the mix, I guess. But yeah, the project really nudged me over the line to kind of commit to leaving.
Do you want to explain what the project is then?
It's like an onion, taking a leaf out of Shrek's book. It's got a lot of layers to it, but it originally started last year, January, where essentially I had this mad idea of climbing Mount Everest, but the ordeal wasn't just to climb Everest. It was about the effort it takes to climb such a mountain, not whilst in country climbing a mountain, but also coming from my background, little funds, little knowledge of high altitude when I first started. But it was a challenge in itself to just see that mountain. I had the idea on the same night I ended up watching 14 Peaks when it just came out, and the idea to climb the mountain was just that. I was procrastinating. Like we said, it's a killer to all kind of good ideas, let's say. So I was sitting on the couch with my partner, turned it on, and immediately I got this sense of, okay, this needs to happen. I needed, not only it needs to happen, but I felt like it already happened. So from that night, my missus was just like, no, you're not climbing it, it's dangerous, you're not going to come back, basically. And I was just like, okay, good night. And just sat around kind of designing a poster, and just kind of, if you put it out in the ether, you have to commit to it. And that's kind of my thought process originally. But moving on now, a year down the line, it's grown into quite a fantastic way of me giving back through my own passion. So now it's gone to climbing Mount Everest, to go into Everest and go into the North Pole in one consecutive year. And through that, magnifying the message of providing outdoor education to schools and just the local community and community in the UK. So for me, I think the outdoors has been an amazing outlet and insight to myself and the way I deal with just everyday life. And I think going through the conversation, I'm sure we will find out. But for me, the outdoors has provided so much. And if I knew what I knew now, given the exposure to the outdoors, I think life would have been quite different for me. And the reason why the project is meaningful for me, but I believe other people, is because it plants that seed from an early age, and to the caregivers as well, for the younger generation. I think since COVID, we've got a lot of kind of insecurity about networking in the outdoor industry, or just getting together outdoors essentially has been kind of this dark cloud for a lot of years really, and I want to kind of get that back into anyone and get used to being outdoors and just the journey of it.
So you. No, you go. No. So you gave us a lot there. You there's like a broad stroke of your kind of your message, what you're working on, and this idea of giving back. But also you mentioned as part of it mental health, looking after your day to day, the outdoors, and in that as well, you said talking about this Everest project as well, and then Everest to the North Pole in one consecutive year is. With the way where you came from, so do you want to walk us through kind of your backstory, where you came from, and how it's led you to be who you are today and what you pursue, and how that's also influenced your ideas and your ideals around giving back now, and how what you necessarily didn't have growing up that you wish you could not go back and necessarily give yourself because you wouldn't be who you were now, but how you want to give that experience to people growing up now because you know how it can change things for you in some positive manners potentially.
Yeah, I guess to be fair, one of the things what stood out in what you said was the things I didn't have, and really what I'm doing now is because of the things I know I did have but didn't recognise the importance of them at the time because I was young. And just kind of angry at the world at that stage. So I grew up in London, southwest London, Surrey predominantly, which is on the outskirts of London. And from some looking from the outside in, I had quite a nice life. My family worked hard. They had, we had a house, this, that and the other. But it was quite a generic kind of upbringing, in all essence. But then what I experienced was identity crisis, I guess. And because of that, I was angry at everyone. I was angry at the world. My mum, my family especially, I just felt quite dissociated with my own family, which was a tough time for my early stages. And even at school that transpired and just carried on with not being able to fit in and being quite insecure with myself. So for me, my only way of fitting in was finding that bad group, that cool kids group, and fitting in with that persona, I guess. And with that then excelled into fitting in with very much the wrong group, just getting into mischief, causing trouble, and so for me it was always adapting to the environment and forcibly putting myself in situations where maybe I just wasn't supposed to be in, e.g. the gangs, the culture around that. But I always had this sense of adventure, like whether it be, okay, you're allowed to go around the block, I would disappear for hours and just find these either derelict buildings or just up and coming construction sites or whatever it may be, or the woods local to like family, relatives and stuff. And I would just venture out and be in my own headspace, on my own, just exploring, I suppose, in my own kind of weird way. And because of that, I think that brought a lot of like experience in just survival and the innate kind of traits you would have as an explorer. But I didn't realise it then. So yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought in in what you asked me, but yeah, that's kind of my bring up. And
so you went in, you would go get lost, explore, and feed that need for adventure.
Yeah,
kind of almost like you got True North Project now. That was kind of like a little bit of an early call in for you there. But you said you were in this gang culture. You kind of got in with the wrong group. How did you go from that to eventually getting out of that and moving into going into the service and the military?
I think for me it was every time I got into trouble, every time I knew I was causing trouble, my gut was telling me, look, you shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And for that, it was, that was my one-to-one with myself, correcting me on course. But I would still go ahead and do crazy stuff. But what led to me to become, to want to join the army, I've always been this kind of lone ranger kind of mentality. I've kind of been fascinated with that kind of story of your family's like being stripped away from you. All you've got is yourself, and that bag on your back kind of thing. And watching films back in the day, it was always that guy with his bag, just come back off from a tour, being back at home and just not being able to fit in because society's just not allowed him to. And I genuinely resonated with these characters in the films. So I think that was really my early kind of thought process of maybe I need to join the army. But I couldn't hold down jobs. My longest job stint was probably about 6 months, and I just had a real problem with someone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
But then I experienced this kind of thing with a very good friend of mine. He kind of, I think he got caught with a lot of stuff by the police, and then that led to the police finding me, and I went to court essentially, and I think that's where it kind of went, okay, you need to change your life. Like, you're not trying to be this person, you don't need to be this person, you don't want to be this person, you need to find a way out. And the only kind of thing which was highlighted for me was joining the military. So that's what I've done as soon as possible. But the process of that was quite long. So for me, it was, I went to the recruiting centre, went, okay, I want to join the army. Didn't know that there was all these trades and different kind of aspects of the roles, and just thought I was going to be in the infantry and this, that and the other. And then as I went into the recruiting office, someone from the corps I did join did say, right, you seem like you got your head screwed on. So some people might get a little bit upset about this, but you need to have like a trade, because you don't really get much education and transferable skills to then go out into the big bad world again once you leave, if you do join the infantry. Like generically, yeah, so generically, like you would hear like the infantrymen go into close protection or something around what they know, and they, most military service personnel, they join at an early age, so they haven't experienced life. I joined quite late, so I was 24 when I joined, so I already had the experience of like letting down my hair and just enjoying my life really, or as I could. So when I did join, I joined for purpose and meaning and to reshape me as a man, to better myself.
Do you think that you needed external discipline?
Yeah, I needed the external discipline, but I was very much, I chewed that fat down to the bone and understood the meaning of me signing on the dotted line and going, right, like, this is a life-changing thing, but this could set you up for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so I was there raring to go. I thought you walk into the recruitment centre tomorrow, you're in green kit, getting on the parade square and stuff like that, which wasn't the case. So when I did go to the recruitment centre, they then said, okay, well, you got to go through this kind of recruitment process. And then I got to this bit where it was like, okay, have you got any criminal convictions or this, that and the other, and the medicals. And I did have a criminal conviction at the time, which wasn't spent yet. And then the kind of horror of getting told, well, you need to wait 4 years until you can join. then I was just like, okay, this was my saving grace. I didn't know what else to do. So I couldn't find a job, and I was just like, okay, I'm committed to the army. How can I kind of just fill the gaps until I can join, and what are the loopholes I can try to join earlier? So essentially, joining earlier wasn't a case. So I was just like, okay, I've just got to train, cut out smoking weed and stuff like that. So immediately I just structured my day with physical activity and education of what could be. Like, I was watching YouTube videos, reading like blogs and documentations of just military service, and at the time I think Afghan was coming to an end, but there was a lot of content for me to digest that, okay, I could lose my life, or I'm sacrificing my livelihood to be in this organisation, but it's something I wanted to do. So I started training with a friend of mine who joined at the same time, funnily enough, and we started running around Richmond Park, which is one of the biggest parks in South London, if not the biggest, and we would just go, okay, we're going to put some weight on, we're going to train like we're already in, and hopefully that will set us up to actually succeed and pass through training when we get there.
Did that work?
Oh yeah, like if there's one thing I would say to anyone joining, is spend a good few months just training. Nothing crazy. It doesn't need to be weightlifting, because I think that goes like from week 3 you're probably as skinny as my little finger. But I would definitely say training like 3 times a week on your aerobic and anaerobic kind of fitness levels will see you through.
What kind of fitness requirements did you have to meet when you did actually go in?
Well, trying to remember, I think we had to do your first. So you go to the assessment centre when all the medicals and everything comes through, and you're like, right, this is the core you're going in, but you still got a little choice. But you go to this assessment centre. I went to one in Aldershot, and it's a 2-day assessment. So they see how you perform as a team, singular, as an individual, and also physical. So the requirements for that, I think, was you had to get 10.5 minute, a mile and a half in 10.5 minutes. Obviously, depending on what you're joining, that criteria might change. So the paras, I think you had to get sub 9 minutes, which I wasn't going for, luckily, at the time. So yeah, you do that. You do a jerry can lift as well. I think it's like 400 meters, carrying 20 liters on each hand, so 20 kg. And if you drop those, you get 1 or 2 tries, and if you don't lift it to the end, you fail. Pull-ups, sit-ups, and the conventional kind of movements, and then you find out you're fit enough to join the army, essentially.
Because I know over the years it's obviously advanced and changed quite a lot. Funny enough, as you said, not doing the weightlifting, I know actually now quite commonly the mid-thigh pull is actually used as a test, which obviously comes from weightlifting.
It does. So even during my time, you did see a massive transition on functional fitness. I think, not just trying to be like a hero or zero to hero. There was a method within the way we dynamically trained, which was good to see, because a lot of people did get broken, either like fatigued or whatever, muscle endurance, through fitness activities. But when they did change that dynamic to being more functional and having stretches involved and this, that and the other, like, you definitely saw more success rate from the sessions, which was good to see. But yeah, you're right. I think it takes over like more of like a CrossFit kind of dynamic now.
No, that brings me on to a quote that I spent ages looking for this morning. I really wanted to ask you about this one, and it's an idea that me and Will have actually talked about before on the podcast, doing two different kind of areas of performance, we'll call it. And it's very interesting you said more like CrossFit-y style fitness, which for me screams work capacity versus razor sharp knife edge performance. So the quote is from, and it's not so much a quote by an ancient Greek general called Philopoemen, who was born in 253 BC in Megalopolis. I think I'm saying that right. And it was not actually what he said, but it's what people recorded in written history. I think it was the book I think it was actually from was Aratus 8. I hope I got this right, but they were speaking about his athletic performance, and because he was going into the military, and they were commenting on his fitness, and they said, "Oh, you should take a wrestling up," and he said, this is the quote, was, they told him that the habit of body and mode of the athletes and soldier were totally different, and particularly that their diet and training were not the same, since they required much sleep, continuous short fits of food, and fixed periods of activity and repose in order to preserve or improve these conditions, which the slightest influence or the least departure from routine is apt to change for the worse, whereas the soldier ought to be conservant with all sorts of regularity, all sorts of inequality, and above all should accustom himself to endure a lack of food easily, and as easily a lack of sleep.
I like that, because I'll be honest, like, as much as I enjoy my fitness and stuff like that, routine just isn't my forte. Like, I would love to, like, for instance, if I do a big challenge, like, I am probably not training for that challenge specifically until maybe a month before. I don't know, the deadline of it just puts me in gear properly. And again, with nutrition and dieting, I've taken on this kind of metaphoric kind of understanding of my own diet, and just going, you know what, if you train what you put in, to counteract what you're putting in, and train with it, essentially you can eat what you want, and I do stick to that. I don't really structure my diet around what I'm doing. And that kind of stems from the survival mentality as well, because let's face it, if the world goes to shit, which is looking more likely every day, right? If the world goes to shit, essentially you're going to be on tin food or whatever it may be. Not saying I'm this kind of what do you call them? I'm not a prepper, right? Yeah. But I'm open-minded to suggest that the world could go into that way.
Yeah.
So I like kind of testing and intermittently fasting. That's probably what I do most. And like, people say to me, "Oh, you haven't eaten all day," and it's like, yeah, well. Like, I'm the one who's going to probably survive out. If I get hungry, I'm probably not going to starve for long, kind of thing. Or I'm used to that feeling. And it probably stems from back in the day when I didn't have a lot of food and stuff like that. It was like, okay, I'm hungry, but I've still got to make ends meet, essentially. Yeah. So I think that's my stubborn mentality on what I do now.
I think that's something that's definitely helped me personally, is if I know what it's like to be hungry, then I'm not going to worry when I get hungry. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of people don't have that discomfort in their life. They're just like, oh yeah, I can just have meals when I want, I can eat. And it's like, until you experience that, you're never going to be ready to experience that. Yeah. And then if you're spending long days in the mountains doing your challenges, we do similar things. So it's like, unless you've experienced what that discomfort's like, then you're never going to be ready to do it.
And I think it also stems to like in the military, right? You don't get a menu. Well, you somewhat do, but the food, what's handed to you, is essentially that's yours. Like, you either eat it or starve, and it's not the best flavors. It's getting better, but essentially, if you're out in the field for 3 weeks and you're you're drained physically, mentally, and everything. The only thing that's going to sustain you and keep you going is that tasteless food, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think being comfortable with the uncomfortable feeling of eating this like dog food, essentially, it just trains your mind and gets you ready for these uncomfortable situations, what we could all see ourselves being.
I love that line you just said, and isn't actually one of the tenets of the Royal Marines to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I love it. I absolutely love that. So
yeah, no, it's a good way to live, because let's face it, life, unless everything's planned out for you and you can skip down the yellow brick road, essentially, like, life is tough and it throws curveballs at you. And I think being prepared to be uncomfortable is a very good way to live. Doesn't mean you have to go to drastic measures to kind of counteract any kind of uncomfortable feelings, but I think you should certainly be prepared in potentially, like, let's say COVID. Like, I was comfortable being indoors 24/7 because guess what? Most of my life I've been in my own kind of mind. I've learned how to dissect these negative feelings, however it may be. Don't get me wrong, like, I definitely went down a spiral and things hit hard, but I felt I would have dealt with it differently if I was cushioned in this bubble of kind of being okay. Yeah.
Do you think that's something that a lot of people could get around by training? Because what I see is lots of people that are comfortable, they've got a lot of things laid out for them. Mm-hmm. When hard times hit, they can't deal with it. Do you think that's something that they could sort of force to happen rather than waiting for the hard times to come?
Yeah, I think training, especially for me, it's a good way to train your mind. Because if something's hard, firstly, if you're going to do something tough or physical, you need to be mentally prepared to be in that space. I think from what I've experienced, having people training next to me in certain difficult situations, is they hit this mental barrier and they haven't seen that or thought about being in this comfortable space before. Therefore, they let go of the gas very early, where if you break past that point, you find out, oh crap, I've got all this energy still in the reserve tank and I can go further. And I think being in tough physical matters, whether it be hill walking or whatever, because there's a lot of times you walk up a hill and trying to put that one foot in front of the other is probably one of the hardest things. But see, for me, that's the most transferable skill set to have, is being able to keep going until you reach that summit, come back down again with your legs hurting, because that just teaches you, okay, your mind was telling you to stop, but you was able to break past that and continue through that hard time, and guess what, you get an amazing view out of it. So for me, I like to say to people to use that analogy, that one foot in front of the other, especially if they're walking with me and hiking, is, okay, it's going to be tough, but at the end of the day, if you're able to get to that top, you're able to overcome anything.
Amazing. So coming on from that, talking about your challenges, first off, could you give us a list of things that you've done, like challenge-wise, to prepare you for Everest? Mm-hmm. And then also I want to dig into the 12 in 4 challenge as well.
Right. Yeah. So my first challenge was assisting a friend of mine, and he done 100k on the South Downs, and for me, I was just like, oh, it's a bit of walking, we'll walk for 100k in 24 hours, happy days, I'll support you. And I knew I was there not to complete, but if I complete, it's fine. And I actually fell short on the 87th kilometre, which I was just like, damn, but I still feel like I achieved something that day. And then I went back maybe a few months later, actually, and I thought, you know what, I'll use that same route and I'll do my first ever marathon there. And me being me, I went, well, I don't like running without weight, so I'm going to put 27 kgs on my back and do my first marathon across country like that. And to be fair, I didn't really digest the fact how tough it was going to be, and my actual diet plan for that activity wasn't the best. Like, I was probably just drinking a ton load of coffee and Haribo and Mackies and all the crazy stuff we eat. And yeah, so I'd done that. Didn't really put a target on it. I just wanted to get well, actually I did. I wanted to put a sub 6 hours on there, which was pretty tough, to be fair. There was a lot of elevation there. So I'd done that. Luckily I had a friend of mine who he was the one who suggested or planted the seed for Everest as well. But this friend, he's the type of guy to kind of go, yeah, I'll start with you, and when I can't be arsed no more, I'll just wait for you to finish. And every time he's the only person with whoever's doing the challenge left, and he still goes. He's an amazing kind of guy. But yeah, me and him was just on a duddle really. I was slowly shuffling across country doing the marathon, and we got to the end of that. Well, probably about 3 miles out from the finish line, and I just hit this wall of pain, and just like my skin went pale, like I was dizzy, I was about to throw up, and he just basically went, "You want a can of Coke and a cigarette?" And I went, "Yeah." So at the time, yeah, that was probably the best thing for me, because it got me on my feet. I had a little moment, kind of talked to myself and finished that. So that was my first kind of on my own challenge to kind of take on for myself. What was the other challenges I've done? Most of my challenges have been with other people's, and just supporting them. I like seeing people succeed in these crazy challenges, one of which was supporting the last kind of leg or challenge of Jake Best, who done, I think, 7 types of marathons with 20 kg or X amount of kg on his back, and he absolutely smashed it. But I essentially done my second marathon round a running track with him, which again, marathons I never thought I would do. So that was just quite good to see that I could achieve that. And then I suppose the next big challenge was the 12 and 4 when last year, or the back end of last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you explain the 12 and 4 to us? Something I found quite funny with the 12 and 4 was that's when I sort of really found out about you. I'd seen you on Beyond 6 and stuff, and Ash had told me about you as well, but I'd never followed you on anything. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, he's trying this 12 and 4 thing," and I didn't get it, so I followed you. And me and my mates were going to go do the Welsh 3000s like the week before or the week after you were doing the 12 and 4. And that was my first challenge since I broke my ankle, and I was out for 2 years, so my fitness was gone and we completely flopped thanks to me. But 5 weeks time, trying again. So, but then yeah, we saw your one, and yeah, I just wanted to know more about it basically.
Yeah, so the 12 and 4, it was something to test myself in the UK to see if I can go the distance of climbing Mount Everest and kind of just test my abilities. It was just to see if I can put my money where my mouth was, essentially. And thankfully, again, the guy who planted the seed about Everest found out about this list of mountains what accumulate to the height of Mount Everest, 8,848, I believe. And I was just like, yeah, I've got to do this, but how can I make it even more tougher? Because on this kind of link, it said, yeah, you can tick them off over a couple of months or years and this, that and the other. And at the time, I was like pretty much, Ogwen Valley was my training ground. So each day I went there, I would probably do 3 mountains in a day. And I was just like, okay, I can gauge that. Okay, so I'll do that in 4 days. Essentially, it's the 12 tallest mountains in Snowdonia. And that adds up to the elevation of Mount Everest. But then how I done it, I thought, you know what, I'll climb up and down each one to just make it a bit more tougher. Not that it wasn't tough already, but I just wanted to see if I could go that extra further. Like, that's one of our mottos within my friends group, like, just go that little bit further, and just, yeah, keep going beyond. Hence why, like, I love to be on 6. And then, yeah, through the madness, it's funny you say the Welsh 3000s, because I had a lot of people going, isn't that just the Welsh 3000s? And it kind of got repetitive the way I had to say, no, it's not, because in the Welsh 3000s, my understanding, I've never done it, is you're pretty much hand railing all the peaks until you get to Snowdon, right? That's what I believe. I don't know if you go up and down each one.
So there's 3 sections of like 5 mountains. So you do a bit of ridge hopping.
Okay.
But there still is like decent elevation.
Yeah, so me, I was just like trying to figure out how to separate the two, because essentially how it felt, it was, I'm just doing the Welsh 3000s with a different name on it. And for me, it wasn't that. So yeah, essentially climb each mountain in 4 days, and at the end of that it ended up being much higher than Everest, and essentially it was from sea level, so that was a good tick in the box to see that I was capable to do that and just commit to something which was very hard. Like, there was this one point, even me and Asher, we fell out, or I say fell out, I was not even myself at this point. I've done, I think it was 10 mountains, it was dark, miserable, and it was literally one foot in front of the other and hope for the best, basically, because there was a lot of times where I just felt faint. And as we were coming down, I forget the name of it, but it was still in Ogwen Valley. We were coming down towards Ogwen Cottage, but quite a fair distance away, and I just remember passing out. And then everyone ran into me going, are you all right? And I just went, yeah, I just need a moment. This is tough. Like, every one of my kind of support groups, they didn't do the whole lot with me, which was good, because if anyone wanted to be a hero that way, it would be 2 of us in a hurt locker for the whole duration, and it probably wouldn't have happened. So it was good to see that everyone was kind of working together to see me cross the line. But yeah, that was essentially just to get a tick in the box to see if I can do it without going to like the Himalayas or something like that.
How exactly did you do it though? Because some of them, like, they are just connected. Did you have to like go up, do one, and come down, go over it again to get to the next one?
Yeah, we done that a lot. And you know what, I was kicking myself halfway through it, thinking, you know what, I should have just handrailed all of them. Like, because there was, I think it was Waigan, is that the one over the other side? So I went over that twice, and then I think it was Summit 8, we got ourselves in like quite of a pickle. Like, we had a fresh support group with fresh legs, but I didn't feel comfortable putting them into danger, and so we got in this kind of cove kind of bit, what they put rocks around, and you get sheltered a little bit, and the storm just came over us and it was horrendous, but I was committed. Like, I didn't want to turn back just to come to this bit again. Luckily we did, because the next day we found out the terrain was really bad even in daylight. So we made the right decision collectively to just turn back and not kind of go to the next summit. So that was probably the hardest bit, is to say, right, we got to turn back and we're gonna just have to continue this tomorrow and cut like 5 mountains in one day.
Fair enough. Have you done anything since the 12 and 4?
Challenge-wise, not really. I do have a few in mind. I want to do the Murph Challenge for 30 days, and then see if I can do that for 2 months. That's kind of just a fresh kind of idea.
Do you explain what that is?
So the Murph Challenge, it's it stems from Lieutenant Murphy, who passed away. I think he was a part of the film The Lone Survivor lot. And essentially what he used to do when he was on tour was do this so-called Murph Challenge. Well, it was his challenge, but he would do that every morning, which is a mile run followed by, I think, 300 pull-ups, 200 sit-ups and 100 press-ups, and then followed by a mile run as well, carrying 20-pound kg on a vest. And I love stuff like that. Like if you don't run with weight, me and my friends have a joke, but we call people who run without weight like no weight wankers. But it's just an inside joke. Like if you're running or walking or doing anything, like fair play, just get out there and do it. But for me, I just love the fact of straight away you're going in that hurt locker. You're in pain from the get-go, and it's how you figure out how to make it as comfortable as possible but more as effective as possible. So yeah, I've done the Murph Challenge once or twice, like intermittently, but now I just thought, you know what, that's a challenge I can do anywhere, so I'm just gonna keep doing that, really.
Okay. And I've noticed that a lot of your training is like predominantly outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Why outdoors? What benefits as the outdoors? What draws you to the outdoors? Why train outdoors instead of getting a gym membership and training inside?
Well, firstly, why not outdoors? I think for humans, the outdoors is just, that's the one thing, if anything, what connects us all, right? And for me, there's a fascination of, even on a run, like you may see something you wouldn't see outdoors, and that sparks a train of thought you wouldn't have had. So I say the outdoors is like the mirror without needing a mirror, or the psychiatrist without sitting on that couch and getting dissected by a shrink. It's that moment of clarity with just yourself, or even if you do things with a group, you still get that moment of clarity which you probably wouldn't get in the gym or just indoors.
Fair enough. And then what sort of does your general training consist of? I know you said before a challenge, like a month before, you'll train more specifically for that.
Mm-hmm.
But do you just train generally? Is there any sort of structure to it, or is it just...
You know what, I'm a bit rogue when it comes to training. It's whatever the kind of body is missing out. If I feel like my body's got a deficit of something, like at the moment I'm doing a shed load of running because I just feel like I'm not in that place I wanted to be, like athletically. And then sure enough, I'll probably start lifting weights again when I feel like my body needs a bit more weight training. But I don't really have a day-to-day structure. I just do what my body tells me at the moment, or what I think I need more of. Like if I've sat on the couch for, let's say, a month end, which never happens, but metaphorically, I would definitely start going on a run, put weight on my back, maybe go on a tab, which is a tactical advance in battle, which you would do as a group, but singly you put weight on your back and you just walk really fast, or they call it double, which is shuffling, and like that's the stuff I enjoy, and I feel like just do what you enjoy, but get the most out of it.
And if someone wanted to start doing these challenges or just get out in the mountains more, how would you direct them? Say they've never done anything before, they've been quite comfortable, they're trying to learn to be uncomfortable. How would you get them from where they are to being out in the mountains?
Come see me, drop me a DM. Yeah, definitely. Like, one thing I love to see is people experience that new environment, and that new challenge of themselves. That's why I'll put their challenges before mine. Like, I just love seeing people thrive from the unknown experience. So for me, I would say, what is the challenge, where I can help you. If it is you want to do the Welsh 3000s, I would say, okay, let's figure out your base level. From there, I would structure not a program, but I'll direct you in where you would need to train, I think. And yeah, there would be a bit more structure to it if there was a specific goal in mind. But if someone just genuinely wants to get fit as well, or just experience the mountains, again, just do it with, especially if it's outside your comfort zone and you've never done it before, do it with someone who has done it before. There's nothing worse than someone going to the mountains and getting lost and having to call mountain rescue and all that stuff. So definitely prepare enough to be in that space where you're training.
So, being outdoors then, being in the mountains, what has this given you that you didn't have when you were younger or didn't realise that you had access to? What has it given you that you want to give back?
A sense of knowing who I am. Again, like, my motto for like the True North project is find your true north, and for me that's what resonates with me the most, is being able to step away from your peer group and the noise of just everyday life and realise what is your passion. And this could be a passion you've never even experienced or dived into, but have this fascination with, and try to experience it and see if you can direct yourself in that way where you can make a living from your passion, essentially, or just be happy. Because the mountains, especially, was my therapy. When I started hiking like full time, I did go down a dip mentally, and like I got close to suicide, and it was shortly after that I started climbing the mountains, and after then I never looked back. So definitely a good space to be in.
You got anything else, Taylor?
No, that's me. I'm pretty wow.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming down and sharing your story with us.
No problem.
It's been amazing to have you on. And yeah, if you want to support us in any of our challenges, feel free.
I'll be happy to. Honestly, guys, it's an open door policy. If you have something where you feel like I can help you, support you, and I don't know, do a recce on a mountain that you've never been on, or whatever it may be, I'm happy as long as it fits with my schedule as well.
Cool. So vice versa goes to you.
People find you online then?
So on Instagram is probably where I'm more active, so TrueNorth_project, and the website is truenorthproject.co.uk. Again, shoot me a message if you've got anything like in regards to training or just fascination with what the mountains holds for you. Let me know.
Amazing. Thanks again, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.